Good evening and welcome, members of the Lantern Village Association and our neighbors. Welcome to our annual meeting, which usually is our taco fest, and then it was going to be a pasta fest, and then COVID struck and it stayed. So necessity is the mother of invention. So we have come up with the Taste of Lantern Village, and since we cannot provide you food directly, we will be providing members who are participating tonight with discount coupons for local businesses. We also usually at our annual meeting hold our election of officers. Usually one year it's president and treasurer, and another year it's vice president and secretary. But this year we did that election by email out to our members, and thank you to all of our members who responded in the vote. As this is my last event as president after 4 years, I'd like to thank our board of directors for the Lantern Village Association. In the past 2 years, we've taken on new board members who've come on with lots of ideas and commitment to the Lantern Village. And with their excitement and their ideas, we have been able to start bringing our neighbors together. We had our first mixer, had more planned. COVID interrupted those plans. We've started supporting Girl in the Curl with picking up trash, and we'll continue to do that. We started for the first time our scholarship to 2 high school graduating seniors at Dana Hills High School. We did $500 scholarships to 2 people, and they are both enrolled at Saddleback right now. We, in the past, 2 years ago, did a candidates forum. We will do a candidates forum again next month in October 14th, so stay tuned for that. And with our new board members in the last 2 years, we've worked at providing more support to businesses. A business member who joins, we advertise their businesses on our website. We welcome your input, whether you're a member or not, and you can contact us through our webpage. There is a contact link on that. But many of you are not members tonight, so we encourage you to join us. We are very fortunate in Dana Point because our city always has supported the Lantern Village Association, participating with us by providing us with the latest updates. And once again, they have not let us down, even with this change in format. So we want to thank Mike Killebrew, our manager, our city manager, and every department head for their time tonight. So Mike, I turn it over to you to hear the latest and the greatest that's happening in the Lantern Village and the city.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you for 4 years of leadership with the Lantern Village Association. You know, the neighborhood groups are a key component in how we do our job as well. So your leadership in that group is appreciated. And Enzo, congratulations on being the incoming president, and I want to thank the rest of the board for all of your community service. It is very much appreciated. I also want to thank our staff that's on the call. We've got Kelly Reenders, our assistant city manager, is going to provide some updates. Brenda Wisneski, our community development director, will provide some updates, as will Jeff Rosaler, our community development manager. We've also got on the call, in case there's questions, our Public Works Director, Matt Sinacore, and our General Services Director, Robert Sedita. We're hoping our Chief of Police, Lieutenant Kirsten Monteleone, will be able to join us. She's pulling double duty today. There was an incident, I'm told, down in San Clemente, and their Chief of Police out of town, and she was covering for him. So she, I'm guessing, will not be able to participate. We did have she was going to give some updates on crime trends and so forth, but given the happenings of today, doesn't appear that she will be able to participate. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with a budget update. And if I could get the first slide, Grant. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of set the table here. Everybody knows COVID-19 has impacted everything in society as we know it. In particular for Dana Point, our hospitality industry, our hotels and restaurants in particular, have been significantly impacted. That hospitality industry does make up about half of our general fund revenue, and that's the fund that pays for police and parks and fixing our streets and everything else. So the hotels themselves, they provide straight up a third of our revenue. from the hotel bed tax, but they also happen to be our largest drivers for sales tax. That does make up about 15% of our revenues, and then they're also some of our largest property taxpayers. If you look at the resorts, they are worth quite a bit. They pay quite a bit in property tax, and property tax in this town makes up about 25% of our revenues. Given that COVID-19 impacts on tourism and particularly group travel as well, the groups that aren't coming to our resorts for their business functions, last fiscal year, and our fiscal year begins on July 1st, so we're now in a new fiscal year 21, but last fiscal year that ended June 30th of this year, we saw a hit of about $3 million on a $40 million budget because of COVID. This year we're looking at, just from our hospitality industry, from our hotels, about a $6 million hit on that $40 million budget. And on top of that, the impact on our sales tax is about another $1 million. When we go through all of our revenues and do all the updates, we took some budget adjustments to the city council last week. We were solving a $7 million budget hit for revenues this fiscal year because of COVID. With that, we've gone about solving it. The council gave us some pretty clear direction last May when we started talking about how are we going to work our way through this. And it was really, I'm going to talk about it on the next slide a little bit more, but everything we've done is really to minimize the impacts on our services to the extent possible. For this year's $7 million hit, we have, here, Grant, go ahead and go back to the last slide. I'm going to jump to this in a minute. For that $7 million, we ended up finishing last year after we adjusted our budget in May. We still came in about $1.4 million better. So we're using that to help address the $7 million hit this year. We traditionally also budget very conservatively on our revenues. That means we budget low. And it's always nice to have a surprise of your revenues coming in higher and having a surplus. And we also budget our expenses fairly high, with the full expectation that we would have budget to address emerging issues, but we typically do come in under budget and again have a surplus on the expense side. So in adjusting our non-COVID related revenues, we've tightened that up a little bit. Still conservative, but not as conservative. So we're helping to solve our problem with about 1.2 million from projections from our other revenues. We've been leaving quite a few positions vacant in the city, including my position. I was promoted to city manager in April. My prior position as the finance director, we're leaving that vacant, and I'm pulling double duty right now. Don't get a lot of days off, but kind of contributing to the cause. But there are several other positions that have become vacant that we're just reorganizing who's doing what for the city. And we're running with those vacancies, but we're going to get about $650,000 in savings from personnel. In addition, the budgeted raises for staff, as everybody would expect, has been eliminated. So nobody's getting raises this year. And then we were also able to go through our entire $40 million budget and carve out another $1.7 million. That still left a $2.1 million hole to fill. Thankfully, the city has very healthy reserves coming into this pandemic, and one of the reserves is specific to economic events, that if we have a sharp downturn, particularly in hotel revenues for any given reason, that we did have a $4.3 million reserve set aside. We're using about 2.1 million of it this year to balance the budget, and then it's on me and the council to come up with how to refill that reserve, and we're going to do that next spring as we start putting the next year's budget together. And we will go ahead and go to the next slide now. Okay, so the overall status, I had mentioned that the council's direction to staff was to minimize impacts on city operations. So we didn't cut a nickel out of our infrastructure improvements budget. So all of our streets projects, the rehab of our streets, the slurry seals, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, all that stuff is still fully funded, and Matt Sinacori and our public works crew is diligently moving forward with executing those projects. So you won't see a slowdown in our public works projects. I mentioned before that we used a little bit less than half of our economic stability reserve, but that also means that we still have more than half of it funded, and we are expecting lingering effects, if you will, of COVID, even if a cure is widely distributed and the pandemic itself subsides. We expect lingering economic effects on our hotel industry in particular into the next couple of years. So we're planning on dealing with those revenue impacts. And then as far as we do have this, like I mentioned before, that we've got pretty healthy reserves. We've got identifiable about $13 million additionally. We've got an emergency reserve that's just for catastrophic events, not economic necessarily. We've got that fully funded, and then a number of other accounts at which the council has discretionary authority to spend to address something. So again, we've still got 13 million additional in addition to the economic stability reserve. That's at over 2 million. So a total of north of 15 million just in those accounts. But we're not going to just balance our budgets based on those. We will be looking at the next couple of years of trimming back our expenditures and looking for revenue opportunities. So as far as next steps, wandering through this, the pandemic impact on our budget, it's unprecedented. There's not a playbook anywhere. We are monitoring. We have a weekly, now bi-weekly call with all of our hotels, and they're giving us some insights on what they're looking at as far as moving forward, but also looking for opportunities for the city to partner with them on helping them through this, through the pandemic. Like I mentioned, next spring we'll be putting together the next budget. We do a 2-year budget. So we're updating all of our long-term financial plans, and we'll put the next budget together, and we will survive with the goal in mind to minimize service impacts. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I believe we're going to take questions at the end if possible, and go ahead and punt over to our Assistant City Manager, Kelly Reenders, for the next part of this presentation.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, Mike. We can go ahead to the next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a really quick overview of communications, homelessness, economic development, and some tools and resources. So my first slide really focuses on 2020. You can go ahead to the next one. What a year. So really a big focus for myself personally and within City Hall was really communications this year. When COVID hit in March, there's a lot of information. I mean, everything from grocery store hours changing to what's open, what's closed, beaches, roads, city facilities. We really tried to let the community know what was happening as we received information. We, for many months, were publishing a community newsletter on a daily basis. We went to 3 days a week, we went to once a week, and now we're sort of backed off to every other week, but really trying to disseminate as much information as possible about what was happening in the community with COVID. Next slide, please. In the midst of all of that, we still were very focused on serving our homeless community. While a lot of other communities had their outreach, just calling, making contact via phone with individuals on the street, our outreach continued to go out in person and felt that they could be safely socially distanced outside and still serve our homeless community that really had needs during this time. And you can see that reflected by the numbers. 295 individuals contacted, 430 collaborative engagements, and this is just really within the first 6 months of the year. And we had 27 individuals get housed. So on average, we're working with about 20 clients per week. I mean, it's been a pretty successful year in addressing homelessness, even through the pandemic. And we have a really effective team between our outreach, between Public Works and our homeless liaison officer, who's just awesome. We meet weekly and we discuss, our cases weekly and really work to try to address the needs and resources of people that we see on our streets. So it's been a pretty successful year so far in working with homeless in Dana Point. Next slide. I'm going to flip over to economic development. and just some of the partnerships that we've been working with. Brenda's going to talk more about the city operating permits, the outdoor operating permits. That really, community development really mobilized quickly. I was sort of just on the front end getting the word out, but over Memorial Day weekend, they really did a great job processing many outdoor operating permits for our restaurant community as quickly as possible so that they could get their doors, at least partially open by being outside. So we also partnered with Visit Dana Point. They came up with a travel safely, travel confidently seal, and that really focuses on meeting some health standards and having some accreditation on those health standards by outside parties so that they could help people feel confident in traveling to the resorts, that they were doing so safely, even in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And like Mike said, we've had weekly calls with the hotels and resorts really to try to address what their needs are and get a pulse on kind of what's happening from the overall tourism perspective of the economy through the pandemic. Next slide. Probably the biggest partnership that we really had this year was really with the Chamber of Commerce, who's just done an awesome job supporting all of the businesses in the community. We partnered together on several programs. We did a best practices operating guides. This was before the state had really issued a lot of the guidance that our businesses needed to open safely. The chamber was very much ahead of that, and we were in lockstep with them trying to get things out to our businesses, including a reopening handbook. We did a video, which our mayor narrated, which was very short, but navigating uncharted waters, really trying to have a positive message of supporting small business in the community, even though people were, pretty much staying at home. And then we've really been focused lately on our Mask Up DP campaign. We have decals, posters, really trying to help people comply with the health orders so that we can continue to see the trend of the cases going down within Dana Point and the greater Orange County community, which is allowing us to move our economy forward. And we've done banners with the chamber, and we're talking now about doing a gift card program. So we have a few things in the works, but really been a great partnership with the chamber to try to help businesses through this challenging year. I'm going to switch gears, do quick tools and resources. We have an app. If you don't have it, please download it. It's report number 2 and then DP. And this is where you can enter service requests if you see graffiti, if you see abandoned property, if you have a short-term rental and you think they're having a big party, you can put all the complaints through this app. They go to the appropriate staff person, and those complaints get turned around and addressed rather quickly. And then you even get a follow-up that request has been resolved. So really encourage everybody to download and use this app. It's super easy. Next slide. Another tool that we have is our aboutdanapoint.com website. And on this website, you'll find that we have a pipeline, which can be very of interest if you want to know what's happening as far as a development perspective in the community. The pipeline is updated regularly. Brenda's actually going to go through that pipeline with you as part of her presentation, but that's always up and available. And there's other things available on this website as well. But I would tell you that the pipeline is probably one of the most informational tools that you can look at aboutdanapoint.com. And that concludes my quick presentation on what's been happening. My contact information is up on this next slide. I really encourage everybody, if you do not follow us on social media, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if you are not signed up for the community newsletter, please do so. You can do so on our main homepage, and we're trying to put information out as this year has evolved. Thank you very much.
Now it's my turn. Development update. Good morning or good evening. Thanks for having me here. I'm Brenda Wisneski. I'm the Director of Community Development, which includes planning, building, and code enforcement. So I'm going to cover building and planning, basically the development that's been happening into the city. And then Jeff Rosaler, the Community Development Manager, is here to talk about code enforcement. So I want to provide you kind of an update of what is happening in the city. A lot has been happening, even though it's been busy in our department here. It's been quiet in other areas. The planning and building has been active this year. So on to the next slide. This actually shows you some of the new businesses that we have seen and will be seeing. And there's 10 restaurants that are shown here, and this is definitely not all of them, but some of the more exciting ones you're probably already aware of that are have already shown their success. Glass Bar, for instance, even Taco Bell, their renovation for a drive-through has been a great asset to the community. And some of the things I'm excited about coming up is Gianna's, the Italian bakery that is taking over Aurora's, as well as Station Craft, which is going to be more than just a brewery, I understand. They have like gourmet food. So great things happening on the business side. And now on to also Kelly mentioned, the next slide will show you a great picture of the fact that we have tried to help our businesses as much as we can during this time. Once we heard that there was a green light for businesses to begin operating outside, we immediately went to work on developing a 3-page application that was available online, and basically it allows businesses to locate outside, including their parking lots, the public right-of-way, and what I am so glad to see is that they really have created an ambiance in our community. And to date, we have issued 28 temporary outdoor dining permits, and actually 2 permits for salons to operate outside, although I've heard recently they can now go indoors. So the ever-changing environment, our hope was to help the businesses as best we could during this crazy time. So on to new development. The next slide just basically shows you the different stages. We have projects under review, we have projects approved, and projects under construction. So projects under review, the first one I want to touch on is related to I think it's the harbor. Next slide, Grant. So the harbor, as you know, the county owns the land, but they entered into a private partnership with a developer. And basically it's broken down to 3 elements. The first being the commercial part of it. And they are now in the stages of actually pulling their permits from the county. We hope to see that the parking structure located at the corner of Gold Lantern and Harbor Drive should be breaking ground towards the end of this year. The other component is the marina itself, reconfiguring and upgrading the slips. That actually received approval from the California Coastal Commission last week. And the third piece is the hotels. There's 2 hotels that are planned to replace the Marina Inn. And where that is in the process is actually with the city. We are processing a coastal development permit for those 2 hotels. One will be considered it's called a low-cost accommodation surf lodge, basically, and that's 136 rooms that is intended to replace the affordable units that the Marina Inn provides. And then it'll be more of a market rate hotel called Dana House that will have 130 rooms. So that process, we are developing the EIR right now, and we hope to have the public hearings started early next year. So the next slide will show some of the other up-and-coming projects. Lantern Point Hotel, this is the hotel the city actually approved, located on Cove Road and Green Lantern, and this is at the Coastal Commission. That is to provide 51 hotel rooms, and we hope that the Coastal Commission will be reviewing this project towards the end of this year. And the next project, next slide, will actually show another hotel, the Cannons Hotel. And that again is a project in the same status as the Lantern Point. Unfortunately, it's in the Coastal Commission's hands based on an appeal. But again, we also hope that they will be reviewing this towards the end of this year. And the next project is, next slide, is the Wave Resort, a 3rd hotel. And this one's at the corner of Coast Highway and Green Lantern. And this actually has its coastal permit. It's been through the Coastal Commission, and the developer is just, they're delayed a bit, but we're hoping they'll be moving at some point in the next year or so. And the next slide will show some of the projects that are actually, this one is the Greer project. This is located at the corner of Violet, I believe, Rado's and Jack's restaurant. This will replace those buildings. And this project is in the building permit process. It has received all of its entitlements. And we hope that this might be breaking ground again next year at some point. They are making some potential changes to it, but this is another mixed-use project. Another project that is next stage is Vistas on Mars. This is actually one that's under construction. This is the one that's at the corner of Golden Lantern and Coast Highway. It's a mixed-use development. So what you'll see right now are some construction fences, a big hole in the ground. The reason for that is it has 2 levels of subterranean parking to provide all the required parking for the residential units and the on-site commercial and restaurant uses. The next slide shows Del Prado. This is, again, as y'all seen, the project that is probably furthest along in town center. It's going to provide the greatest level of change to our community. What you see now is it has actually some of its finishings, and so you can really see that as coming to form. This project has evolved over time, and actually today it provides some extra parking. All parking on site that is non-residential will be available to the public, so it's going to be a great resource for new businesses coming to town. And on to the next slide is basically we're talking about resources to help you find out what's happening in our community. Kelly touched on a couple of those. There's a lot going on. So this is the development update report. Is a report that's written to the City Council each month. It highlights some of our larger projects. It highlights some of our advanced planning projects, meaning our long-range projects. It also just touches on some of our smaller development applications that we have coming in. The one here is actually from March 2019 that shows you get us a busy time every month. And lastly, the pipeline. The next slide will show you what Kelly is referring to, and that is a development pipeline that can be accessed from aboutdanapoint.com. And it highlights all the projects that I just mentioned and more. You see the dots here. We try to put things on this site that might be of community interest. So we have here are some of the businesses that are of interest, as well as some of the projects that are just potential, some interests that have been presented to us. So it's a great resource. But if you don't find information on any of these sites or on the app, I encourage you to always contact the city. The planners and I enjoy talking about our projects and future things coming to town. We're super proud of the city, so we're always available for you. So with that, I will go ahead and turn over to Jeff Rosaler. He's the Community Development Manager who oversees the Code Enforcement Division.
Good evening, Land and Village Association. Thank you very much for having me. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about code enforcement efforts over the past year in the Land and Village. As some of you may know, about 2 years ago, we took the Code Enforcement Division and we divided our staff up among the voting districts that we have in town. That means that Land and Village is voting District number 4 has its own code officer that takes care of the entire district. Next slide, Grant. You'll see that last year that officer did 400 code cases in the Land and Village since the last Taco Fest. I know this isn't Taco Fest this evening, but since the last time we met, Ray Oropeza, who is your code officer, has gone out and created 400 code cases. Of those, 93% of those are closed, with 7% currently active. Those active ones probably were open in the last month. I did it from about September 15th to September 15th of this year. So those cases he's currently working. It usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks for a code case to be open and closed, but that depends on how respondent a owner or a property renter is. So sometimes it can take a lot longer, as Robin is aware. Next slide. These are, of those 400 cases, these are some of the types of cases that occurred in the Lantern Village. As you are all probably aware, there is a lot of dumping of materials. I do want to give a quick shout out to Public Works Department, who has really helped us this past year in sending some of their crew out to pick up these items, some of the smaller items. But the larger items, we go ahead and in our contract with CR&R, we can call and get a bulky item pickup. So they'll come and remove these items such as mattresses, refrigerators, large items off of your street. Ray's been busy looking for folks that are doing construction with without permits, and so one of the things that you'll find them out there is driving the village and looking to make sure that if construction is occurring, that they are doing so in a safe manner and using building permits through our building division and our planning and our engineering divisions. You'll see that we had 54 short-term rental cases. Primarily those cases are for short-term rentals that did not have permits, although we had a handful of nuisance cases for permitted STRs. You'll see another big one is property maintenance, and we'll take a look at some of those coming up. And then it goes on as a number of different cases that our guys do are really knowledgeable kind of across the board with the code, the nuisance code, the zoning code, and the building codes as well. Next slide, Grant. So just wanted to highlight some of the big wins or kind of things that you can tell are certainly an effect of code enforcement in the area. This is an apartment complex that we got a complaint about. One of the tenants had lost power and was actually using a generator in the garage to run power into the facility or the residence. You can see that after we got that problem dealt with, that we were able to address some of the other issues with the building itself. There's new handrails, new windows. We got the front kind of cleaned up, the exterior looking a little bit better. So this is a property maintenance win that, you know, we'd like to highlight. Next slide. Another property maintenance, you know, we do get a lot of complaints in the district, and that's how we generate our cases. But sometimes if Ray's driving along and he sees something that looks old and beat up like this, he'll contact the owner of this apartment complex and make them do the right thing and just bring the property up to date. Next slide. Here's another one where you can see this is actually a safety issue. The railing is old and deteriorated, looks like a little bit of termite rot. And we got the owner of the property do the right thing, come in, pull plans for this, or pull permits, excuse me, submit plans, and make sure that that railing is up to code and up to safety. One of the things you probably all noticed over the past year is the improvement of landscaping on the commercial vacant lots. There was a desire to address a chapter in Chapter 6 of our municipal code that says that all commercial lots must have at least 25% landscaping. And you've probably seen the efforts. This is, you know, not picking on anybody, but this was, you know, a property that was simply dirt, and we had a little bit of runoff problems. But the owner did a great thing and went ahead and landscaped. They used a little bit of mulch, a little bit of 3/4 gravel so they could park on there, and did just a minimal amount of planting and landscape rocks, decorative rocks. The effect is a lot better. We've seen each of the individual property owners throughout town center have taken a similar approach, a similar look, planting some really drought tolerant plants that don't need a lot of water, along with mulch and minimal ground cover to meet the requirements of landscaping in commercial vacant lots. Next slide. So we have a neighborhood and maintenance and improvement guide. We updated it last year. I had handouts at the Taco Fest. This is available for anybody. You just please contact me. I'll get you a copy of this. But really on one side, it tells you all the things that code enforcement is in charge of and can help you out with, and that's that list on the left. However, the list on the right falls under both police services and CASA, or animal control. And so, you know, if you have any questions, you can contact myself, you can contact Ray, you can use the mobile app, report to Dana Point that Grant's highlighted in that live event Q&A area. But if you have any questions, I can also send you, or send Enzo, or send Robin a stack of these flyers that really kind of point out, hey, this is a municipal code violation, and this is who to report it to, and this is how to report it, right? So whenever you're reporting a violation to the city, to the sheriff, or to CASA. You're going to make sure you know the address, the specific complaint. It's always better if you can give your name and contact if you're comfortable. In code enforcement, we always keep people anonymous. We never disclose your name if you are complaining, but it does help us follow up and or gain more information about those complaints. And then the time frame of the violation that it's been occurring. On the screen here, you have Ray's email address. That's your code officer. You can jot that down, contact him 24/7. You have his office line. You can also come into the office. Most of the time, the guys are out in the field during the day, but sometimes you can catch them early in the morning or late in the afternoon when they're doing their paperwork, and you can submit a complaint in person at City Hall. And by all means, go ahead and use the Report to Dana Point app. Grant has given you some links over there, but you can also find the app available to download on the city's website. With that being said, once again, I'm Jeff Rosaler, Community Development Manager, and happy to answer questions during the question portion of the agenda.
All right, Grant, what's the plan here?
It's not me.
Well, the thought is that we'll answer some questions from our attendees. So attendees, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A functionality on the right there to type in your questions, and then your Dana Point city administrators and Lantern Village officers will answer any questions you have. But in the meantime, as we wait for those questions, Robin, Enzo, Mike, city staff, any other?
Yes, I have to reinforce what Jeff said. We are so fortunate in the Lantern Village to have Ray Otapesa as our code enforcement officer. And the website that they were talking about, Report to DP, works beautifully. We are so lucky because Ray is very good about getting back to people, and he's very responsive, and he takes good care of us. Do you have any questions coming in yet, Grant? Because I always can say more.
Not yet, but I'll also share an anecdote. I've used the Report to DP app for the last year or so, and I think I'm responsible for probably 1/5 of the total graffiti complaints in the Lantern Village. And Matt Sinacori always answers me within 5 minutes, even if it's on a Sunday, and they fix it really quick. So it's great to have that connection to the city.
I would like to chime in and support Report to DP also. I've got every one of the city staff's cell phone numbers, and it'd be really easy for me just to call them and say, fix this. I use the Report to Dana Point app because it creates a work order also, and we get reports to see where the issue areas are. So it's important. And Grant, you don't submit as many Report to Dana Point app requests than I do. I'll guarantee it. You can ask my staff.
Challenge accepted.
And I'd also like to give an extra special thank you to Mike Killebrew, our city administrator, because many months ago when I contacted him about this event tonight, and it was going to be virtual, so everything was going to be different, and it was all a pioneer event for all of us. He made the commitment to us, and I just want people to know he's a man of his word, because he's on vacation tonight. He's working with us tonight from wherever on the globe he is on vacation. So Mike, thank you. And while we have a minute, an extra special thank you to Grant, because without Grant's time and expertise, we, the Lantern Village Association, would not have been able to pull this off tonight. And cooperation with the city, the working together, and I know the kind of time it took and the resources it took. So a special thank you to you folks. Any questions yet? People don't know how to do questions on this virtual site?
Don't seem to have any questions at the moment, but
okay. Well, then
we can move on to the next section,
okay.
which is
me. me.
introduction to Enzo.
Yeah. Which is me. And if, as people develop questions, if they will go to our website, lanternvillagedanapoint.org, they will find a link for contact. Contact us with what their question is, and between Enzo and myself, we'll get it sorted out, and it may take a little time, but we'll get back to them. And so now, as
Let me just correct you. I'm sorry, Robin.
Yes.
It's danapointlanternvillage.org is the website.
Thank you.
And I'll post it in the question area.
Thank you. And as my last official function as the president of Lantern Village, it is my privilege and my pleasure to introduce to you our new president, Enzo Scognamiglio.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Robin. We appreciate it. Well, welcome everyone again. For those who don't know me, my name is Enzo Scognamiglio. I was born and raised in Naples, Italy. Came over here when I was about 20 years old, excuse me. And I'm proud and a U.S. citizen for the last 32 years. I've been involved in Dana Point for over 25 years as a restaurateur, business owner, residential property owner, and finally a resident in the last 4 or 5 years. I'm very happy. I currently serve on a few boards, a few to name is Dana Point Chamber of Commerce, Laguna Niguel Chamber of Commerce, and several other small local associations. I wanted to truly thank you, Robin, for your dedication, hard work, and leadership. Robin has been a champion for improving the overall of the Lantern Village. Thank you, Robin. Thanks for all your effort, and thank you for everything you do for our community. God bless. I also wanted to thank the board of directors and their commitment and hard work as well. They have spent countless hours keeping this association vibrant and healthy. A special thank you, Robin again, Valles, outgoing president, Diana Orlando, our treasurer, Georgia Theodore, our acting secretary, Grant Earl, technology chair, Robbie Robinson, membership, Susan Robinette, Dave and Deb Wideret, I hope I said that right, our vice president, Mike Frost, and Edgar and Nina Carbajal, member at large. Thank you all. Lastly, a big thank you to the city officials and staff for their continued support and friendship. We truly treasure that. And by the way, great presentation, stellar. Thank you again. It was absolutely brilliant. I want to say we truly live in a special place. There's a small town intimacy around here. We come together, we create meaningful connection. We have the best beaches, weather, restaurants, shops, and great people around us. I personally am blessed to be able to work, live, and play in what I call my home, the Lantern Village. I truly love my Dana Point. I would like to quickly touch up on some of the upcoming events and a few goals for the association coming up. First and foremost, we will continue to utilize the great momentum we have as an association to focus and working together with our ever-changing community and the new evolution of the Lantern District, as shown by the CD with those beautiful slides. Number two, to continue and expand and improve our scholarship program for students that live in the Lantern Village. Very successful so far. Three, focus on creating community involvement and relationship with our new and improved village mixer. We're going to try to have 3 mixer next year so we can meet and say hi to our neighbors. Number 4, create a new program, Shop, Dine, and Play Local. It's a new program to involve our local businesses and residents with discount incentive for us to use our local area. Seriously, why wouldn't you support your local businesses and neighbors? It's a no-brainer. Number 5, encourage our residents to get involved in local programs such as community cleanups. In fact, there is one hosted by Girl in the Curl every first Saturday of the month. Do please join us. It's fun and a great way to meet your neighbors. I believe it's about 9 o'clock in the morning.
10 in the morning.
10 in the morning, excuse me. 10 a.m. first Saturday of each month. Girl in the Curl. 6, we'll be launching a beautification award program to help motivate and inspire our neighbors to improve and enhance the curb appeal of their home and the neighborhood. Seriously, it's fun. It's a great way to walk around the village and talk to people. Finally, please ask your neighbors to get involved. Join us. Join our association. To join, simply look up our website, DanaPointLanternVillage.org, or find us on Facebook or Instagram, our Dana Point Lantern Village. If you wish to get more involved, just let us know on our website, and we'll be more than happy to answer any question. I want to thank you for your time and see you in the village. I also would like to add that we have the District 4 City Council Candidate Forum Wednesday, October 14 at 6:30 p.m. Obviously, it's an online event. Please join us. Very important. We have 2 great candidates that we'd like to hear from. And that's about it. Any question, again, please feel free to reach out.
So Enzo, we do have a number of questions that some folks have asked. So starting from the top here, I'll just see if the city staff can answer some of these.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll start with an anonymous question. How can we as residents support the hotel industry in Dana Point right now in order to drive sales tax and tourism dollars?
Go ahead, Mike.
I think between Kelly and I, we can probably give some ideas. But just like with all of our local businesses, with the restaurants and everything else, spend your money in town where there's opportunities to have guests as well or make recommendations. Having them stay at the hotels and so forth. I mean, other than driving, they refer to it as heads and beds, getting folks to come to town. If you happen to be in a corporation and or affiliated with a professional association, encourage them to locate their annual meetings here. It's literally the same thing you would think about with any business. It's getting folks to come in and participate in what our local businesses have to offer. I don't know if Kelly has anything else you might want to add.
Lots of our resorts have great restaurants, and I'm sure they would welcome you to come and dine at the resort and enjoy the grounds and spend time there. So don't forget that there are restaurants in the resorts too, and there's salons, and to the extent that they're able to do spa treatments, those things all are great local amenities to take advantage of.
Thank you, Mike and Kelly. The next question is, in regards to short-term rental permits, any updates on when someone can apply for a new permit? I seem to remember there being a max number active, reads the question.
So good timing on that question. The Planning Commission, per the City Council direction, is going to begin exploring a development of a pilot short-term rental program. And the reason for that is today, the short-term rentals that are in existence there's a moratorium still, so we do not have a time frame for when new permits can be issued, but the pilot program is going to be exploring that option. So that the Planning Commission actually is going to start that conversation this Monday at 6 o'clock. The Planning Commission meets in the chamber, but because of limited occupancy, we are urging people to view the Planning Commission on our YouTube page. So it makes it a lot easier. And if you have any comments that you want the Planning Commission to look for in advance, you can submit those prior to the meeting. And there will be follow-up workshops that the Planning Commission will have. So the conversation is just starting, and now's the time to get involved if you want to provide input. And as far as new permits, that will be as part of the pilot program.
Thank you, Brenda. Next question from John Greer asks, when does an existing deck repair require a permit? So maybe, Jeff, you want to answer that one?
Sure, I'd love to. In the case that was highlighted, it was due to the railing being replaced, and so we need to make sure that everything's supported and safe in that railing. If you have individual questions about your project, I would encourage you to come to the building counter and talk to one of our permit techs to ensure that you do or do not need permits.
Terrific, thank you, Jeff. Next question is, does the city have any concerns about the traffic or parking that all the new development will bring, and how will that be addressed?
So I will address the parking issue and also perhaps traffic. But the new development that's happening in Town Center is required to meet the current parking requirements. All new development is parked on site. The development that's happening is in compliance with the adopted Town Center plan. And there is a plan that once these developments are in place, additional parking surveys will be done. A parking survey was done prior to these developments being proposed to assess the parking situation in Town Center, and it was determined at that point that there was ample parking, and so that will be reevaluated as the Town Center becomes more intense with development. In regards to traffic, Matt Senacori, do you want to chime in on that?
Sure, I can do that, Brenda. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, with every project that's come forward for approval, we've evaluated the traffic implications of those development projects, and to date, we have no concerns with the proposed traffic loads on the area. The intersections and the roadways have been designed to accommodate the needs that the Town Center will bring with increased development. So I think we're fine. Like I would tell anybody with traffic, is it's iterative and it requires constant monitoring, which I can assure you your city staff will be doing.
Thanks, Matt. The next question is from Anthony Small, and it's a two-parter. How will the city's budget affect the Lantern Village Association's, well, so it's a three-parter actually. So Anthony asks, firstly, which Enzo has already addressed, what are Enzo's priorities in his new role as president? How will the city's budget affect the association's programs, cultural and otherwise? And finally, what is the vision for the evolution of the legendary and traditional events and new ones? That's a mouthful, but Enzo, if anyone can answer that, it's you.
Well, regarding the budget, we don't rely on any funds from the city. It's strictly association dues from local resident and local businesses. So our budget, it's tight. We work with pennies every day, and that's one of the main reasons we do appreciate if anyone talk to their neighbors and join our association. It's only $35 yearly and will help us tremendously. For future, your guess is as good as mine. These are times that are.
But you already listed your priority.
Yes.
Events.
I guess I was answering the question on the future of the town.
That's part of the planning department.
Yeah. So I hope I answered your question.
Grant,
I think,
can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yes, I think that one's interesting. Anthony asks at the end, what is the vision for the evolution of the legendary and traditional events and new ones? I think that's cultural events and things like that, like the concerts and
So
events.
I figured that was more. I was figuring that was more of a city question than a Lantern Village. Okay. We are simply monitoring all the guidance being put out by the state and the county health officers. We've been doing everything we can to still produce our events. So we had to cancel our concerts in the park. Unfortunately, I mean, let me go back to March. We had to shut down our farmers market, and I was on the phone with the state and our county agricultural commissioner, and I was told that the Orange County didn't have guidelines put in place. We found that LA County had, like, literally the day prior produced guidelines. So we took those guidelines and reopened our farmers market before the county really wanted us to, but the county, it took them about a week to process the same type of guidelines, but we got our farmers market going again. Kelly Reenders and our rec crew has been doing everything they can to keep our recreation programs going. We've been trying. We've had, the events on Del Prado, unfortunately we can't do them, but we're ready to go as soon as we get a green light. We're hesitating canceling things until the very last minute when we have to. But we're looking forward to next summer's concerts. As soon as we get the green light, I don't think the city council wants us to back off of making sure that we're doing what we can to keep some normalcy to everyday life here, and that includes all of our special events.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, Mike. Another question from an anonymous viewer is, can roundabouts be added to side streets like La Cresta, like they already are on La Cresta? The traffic is fast already and will increase as PCH becomes more dense.
Matt?
Right here. I would encourage anybody that has a traffic concern to just call me in the office any day of any week, and I'd be happy to look at any of those options or issues with a specific person.
Okay, fantastic. Those are all of the questions that we have in the Q&A area. We're just about at time. Our scheduled time was 6:30 to 7:30. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, I'll hand it back over to Enzo and Robin.
Yeah, Grant, you had said that we were going to put this event on our website so people who maybe didn't see it or want to see parts of it again can plug into that.
That's exactly right. The event will be available within 24 hours on our Facebook page, Instagram, website, etc. So if friends, family, neighbors couldn't attend tonight, they'll be able to see the entire event by tomorrow.
Perfect. I'd like to conclude with a huge thank you to all. We appreciate all the answers. Again, this has been recorded. Take a look at it on our website when you have time. And
thank you to our fantastic city people, yes, and our board of yes, the association. Thank you so much.
Yes, my wife has prepared a lovely dinner and I gotta go.
Join us October 14th for Candidates Forum.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay.